Okay, we've done Justin. We are going to see that in the agenda. So, thank you to everybody for your comments on that. Mr. Hopwood.
Dr. Hopwood.
Yeah. You have something to say?
So, yeah, thank you. My name is Dr. Stephen Hopwood. I attempted to put a conference on in the town hall recently on 20th of November, and I understand that all but one of you councillors voted to prohibit me from running that conference. I have then read comments in the newspaper by yourself, Mayor, about myself being anti-Semitic, being white supremacist, and being fascist, quotes, in the paper. So I'm concerned about freedom of speech. That was what this conference was about. I'm also concerned about freedom of assembly. So I am asking all of the councillors here to explain why they thought it was essential for them to cancel the conference. The conference did go ahead. You can now view it for yourselves online. I invite you to do so. I invite you to judge whether you think the people there were anti-Semitic, white supremacists or fascist in any way. I can assure you they were not, and once you assure yourselves that they are not, I would like to ask you why it was that you felt it's appropriate to cancel the conference, and whether you would be so kind as to allow me to have the conference in the new year without being prohibited to do so, basically. I'm very concerned about freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, both of which you feel willing to prohibit in our community. Yes.
I'd ask the clerk to answer in the first instance.
Yes.
Because I think there's a couple of points here that need to be put straight away before we're going much further down that debate.
Councillor Hodgson's just stepping out for a moment. Good to speak to Steve. We spoke on the phone. Just to make a point that it wasn't the councillors that made that decision, it was in their capacity as trustees of the Page Adams Trust. You know, it's a formality to say that, but I have to make it clear. And as I've made it very clear to you and some others that have come forward, they need to use the complaints procedure to come forward with regards to that. And as I've explained to yourself or your colleagues tonight, you will not get a direct answer tonight, but if you email me, we will come back to you in due course about that. What I would say from my point of view is that we have a term and condition in the booking form of the Civic Hall, which says that we withhold the right to refuse hire or withdraw hire from anybody that we see fit, and no liability or reason is to be given. And that was the line that was used to cancel the hire. So councillors and trustees can say what they wish.
Yeah, but it's not enough to say you
can
cancel just because you can.
I'm not going to be
you must be seen to be fair and
appropriate. I'm not going to be
Mr. Hopwood, can you please stop? Can we not have like?
I was in the middle of explaining to you
please.
that tonight you may get an answer from councillors in their elected capacity, but I can assure you that the decision was taken by trustees and we've done so in a fair act. Alright, so that's my input.
Yeah.
As a legal advisor to the council.
Great. And exactly what was that fair and reasonable decision based upon? That's my question.
Well,
because nothing is given. But there's no reason given.
It doesn't have to be.
I know you don't have to be, but you know, and it says in the terms and conditions that you don't have to be. But I'm here to say that I expect you to be fair, reasonable, and appropriate in your actions, and not unfair, unreasonable, and inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, you know, there must be some logical, reasonable, and appropriate justification for why there was withdrawal.
It's up to trustees to make.
We know it's up to them, but the question is why. That's what I'm here to ask.
Can I speak?
Yeah.
It's not the subject of this meeting, and it's not the business of this council actually to answer your questions. The decision was made by the trustees of the Page Adams Trust. It's incumbent upon the council to look after the Page Adams Trust as we see fit. The Page Adams Trust is a charitable trust, yeah, and as such has to abide by various ethical and moral codes. And it was felt by the vast majority of the town councillors that this was not a good use of the Civic Hall.
On what basis? What was not good about it? Doctors, lawyers, scientists, academics, experienced journalists.
That's not the subject of this meeting.
you need to be fair, reasonable, appropriate and transparent or not. And I'm calling you on that, and I'm calling you to look at the conference and decide for yourselves, and I'm inviting you to change your mind.
I think we could get into all kinds of butterflies, but it's not actually the subject of this meeting, all kinds of purview.
Well, you're all page admin trust trustees, it's all, you're all here. All councillors and trustees?
Can I respond? Okay. I don't want to respond. We have already responded to a lot of people who have written to us or sent us emails, sort of setting out our reasons either collectively or individually. And we've been over and over and over it. So I'm not quite sure why you want us to go over it again. I'm very happy if you would write me an email to explain personally, because it was all personal decisions. So it was unanimous except for one, which is not unanimous, as I've been told. It was the majority, it was the majority. So I'm very, very happy to respond to you.
Great, I will, thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a mayor, I was the councillor that voted in favour of this. I see no reason why not, because we need to uphold the principle of free speech. I'd rather judge what someone says after they've said it than before they've said it. To do that is bizarre and totally inappropriate. So I uphold the principle and I defend your right to have your conference here if you wish.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing your online conference and we'll see for ourselves.
Yeah.
But the principle of free speech is under jeopardy. The governments everywhere are trying to clamp down upon free speech and freedom of movement. And this trickles right down through the chain of command, even under council chambers.
Indeed.
So we must be very aware of that tendency.
We must.
And uphold the principle of free speech.
I'm trying to.
And judge contribution after it's made, rather than before it's made.
You
That is
know,
a significant point.
Thank you.
I've got another councillor that's okay to
I
address.
invite you to consider this gentleman's opinion.
I have sort of 2 points really. One is that freedom of speech, which I'm all for, is not compulsory platforming, and so one has to be careful about confusing the two. You cannot obligate people to promote opinions that they don't wish to. So that's one thing. So at no point did we ban the conference, we just opted not to personally host it. And as you say, it went ahead and therefore it wasn't banned and nobody's speech was impinged upon. And in fact, all of the people who were due to speak, as far as I can see, are speaking loud and clear on the internet and indeed at the new venue and at all sorts of places. And so I can't see in which way their free speech has been stopped by one body saying we don't necessarily want to broadcast that particular conference for them. You know, that's a different thing.
How do you know what they're going to say? You know, it's prejudging, it's prejudice.
Well, so
That's the hallmark.
what I would say is that the people that made the decision were able to access the very widely available material by the speakers on that subject. So it was quite clear what they were going to say. Unless they had changed their mind and had a whole new section of things that they wanted to say. My point is, wrongly or rightly, we decided we did not want to host that conference. We didn't ban it, we didn't tell anyone else not to host it, we just chose not to host it. So that is not the same thing as stopping free speech. Pubs can throw people out if they're saying things that they want. Any business, any charity, any venue, any web platform, any newspaper can choose what it wants to provide a platform for, and we can too, and we did.
But it's a
And
public venue, surely
the
is
second
it
thing I
not?
would like to say is that as a charity governed by a statutory organisation, we have a responsibility to go with a working definition of truth. And in my view, hence my vote, a working definition of truth is scientific consensus. Now, I understand that you have found a few people that disagree with scientific consensus. But in the same way that if you add up 100 numbers 100 times and get the same result 99 of them, if anyone who is arguing for the number you come up with once, there's a sign of some kind of bias. So scientific consensus is the answer come to by the majority of experts. And we have a responsibility to to stick with scientific consensus. That is not to say that we banned anyone from saying anything else, like you say, your speakers spoke all over the place.
But not in Totnes in public, as is their right.
No, you did.
There's plenty of places in public that we don't administer.
We didn't.
But surely it's a public venue, it's not a private venue.
Well, it's
a town hall, it should be for the public to use at their discretion.
Yeah, and
not
actually,
be policed by your prejudgment of what they may or may not say.
we administer the hall on behalf of the Page Adams Trust, which is there to actually represent
to make sure that no narrative comes through other than the government.
Excuse me, are you going to let me speak now, or are you going to shut down my free speech? Because we are actually responsible for the wider community. And Dr. Hopwood, so-called, I will put it to you that actually you've got 189 votes out of 3,500. Yeah, you don't count as a major force in terms of the voice of the community, and that's called democracy. And we had all kinds of representation from all kinds of different areas that formed everybody's personal decision to vote against you using that space, normalising a platform for you in this community was not considered to be an interest of the community in terms of our response to our electorate, and that is democracy.
Councillor Piper, can I just remind you that we are 2 minutes past 7 and we need to start the main meeting and then...
Well, I'm sure Stephen would draw us up on the fact that we started 5 minutes late. Okay. So, I mean, it's normal to give people 3 minutes. We've given you a lot more than that. Yeah. But if you still want to... I've got another councillor here actually who wants to have their say as well.
Can I just add, seriously, bring us outside the theatre because there'll be more time, and I'm very happy as well, because there are reasons. This wasn't just a sort of a blanket decision made by people who are prejudiced. This was a proper, long, interesting debate, which might be interesting for everybody. So I'll happily...
I'd like to continue the conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Councillor